In this video, I'm going to talk about a service call that comes straight from the real world of HVAC service. Now, when I do videos like these, I'm going to reference situations that I saw in the field or theoretical situations that will come up and involve things that are not optimum, things that are not installed properly, things that are not how they should be. We say the word best practices. These are going to be situations that are brought on by people who do not follow best practices.
Best practices means doing the right thing all the time. Doing the right thing all the time. Doing the right thing all the time. Especially Friday at 4:30.
Here's the first one. Let's try a mismatch. We have a new condenser with an old evaporator. It's really common. People like to match up and just switch out that outdoor unit, and because that's really easy. And a lot of the catastrophic failures happen in the outdoor unit. A compressor goes bad, condenser coil leaks. If it's near the beach like we are where I'm at, maybe it just rots away and you need a new unit. And at the beach, it can rot away within a few years. And then you're left with a relatively new indoor unit or indoor coil, and a unit outside that looks like it's been there for 100 years. I crap you not. They look like they've been there for a long time. One time, I came to a row of Goodman units. There was 4 of them, and they had 4 degrees of severity because the first one was on the ocean, the next one was blocked by the first one, the next one blocked by the second one, and the next one blocked by the third one. The 4th one was half rotted. The 3rd one was missing most of its fins. The 2nd one was missing almost all its fins. And the 1st one, the cabinet had deteriorated to the point at which it would just fall apart if you lifted it up. One time I had a compressor fall out the bottom of a unit just by trying to lift it up. That's what we're talking about here. It happens all the time. Well-intentioned companies will put mismatched units in, especially if it's only a few years old, because you get really close to a match. Sometimes you can get a match if it's close enough to when the previous unit was put in because they haven't changed that much in 3-4 years. Now sometimes a mismatch spans 15 years, 20 years, especially when the refrigerant has been the same for a while. That was the way with R22. Now with 14A, it's been around long enough where you can probably get away with that too. We're about to change over, so you may be tempted just to slap a new condenser on something, but it can have problems. And it most likely will have problems worse if it's older. So let's take an older unit. I ran into a lot of R22 mismatches back in the day, and my favorite example was apartment buildings. Apartment buildings would have a unit inside, and my God, that thing would be from 1978 or 1980 something. I saw a lot of 80 somethings, which is kind of shocking, matched with newer units. See, that newer unit may be a SEER rating of 13 or 12 at the time. It could be either one of those. Let's use a 13. But that older unit might be designed to match up with like a 10 SEER unit or lower. We'll use 10 because 10 ran for a long time. So a 10 SEER evaporator coil is most likely going to be smaller than a 13 SEER evaporator coil. And that's the main difference right there. Not just to say that it might be leaking or prone to issues being as old as it is, but it's going to be smaller. So you have a relatively large condenser matched up with a relatively small evaporator, much smaller than it would be if you put a 13 SEER evaporator in. So when you have X amount of refrigerant that's designed to be in a system, we'll take the properly matched 13 SEER system. Let's say it holds 10 pounds. But if you were to put 10 pounds in this particular mismatch system, it would show as extremely overcharged on the evaporator coil. The evaporator coil would flood. That means as the refrigerant goes to the evaporator coil, it's not boiling off like it should. It's staying in liquid form or liquid gas form instead of forming superheat on the other side. And that's an issue because it lowers the efficiency dramatically because you're not having that proper heat transfer. So maybe you're thinking, all right, let me take some refrigerant out. You have that huge condenser outside, and all of a sudden that huge condenser has way less refrigerant than it should. Let's say you take out 2 or 3 pounds so you can bring that superheat up. So you bring the superheat up, but alas, you have no subcooling. So now you're going to have a hard time cooling too, because you can't get that liquid to the evaporator. It's give and take. Now there are ways you can battle against this or kind of try to work with it. But the thing is, if you're working with it and trying to solve this problem, the best solution would be just to replace the indoor unit, because that's the proper solution. That's the one that gets warranted without question. Now, if you're trying to solve the problem and you can't replace the indoor unit for whatever reason, you can change the piston, try to work with the piston size, and try to even out the subcooling and superheat. Now, you might have the proper superheat, but now the evaporator pressure is too low because you had to back off the amount of refrigerant going into the evaporator. So you have to work with that too. Working with the piston is a possible solution, but it's not going to work as well as switching to an expansion valve. If you put an expansion valve on that coil, it's going to do a lot better, but again, you could run at a lower pressure. You might be working with just a little bit of subcooling, because having to take some of that refrigerant out, try to find a balance, maybe you would have a design subcooling of 10 with a properly matched system, but now you can only supply 2 or 3 degrees of subcooling, meaning if there's a fluctuation, or if the valve opens up completely on a really hot day, someone leaves the AC off, turns it back on, the valve opens completely to flood the coil to bring the superheat down, all of a sudden that pressure that's built up before the expansion valve that's allowing that subcooling to happen is gone. Now there's no subcooling and you don't have very much cooling at all. And therefore, since you don't have much cooling at all, that TXV is going to remain open for a long period of time, causing that system to be very inefficient. When that happens, you could have issues with not enough refrigerant cooling the compressor as well. So it's a snowball effect, and your new condenser may die faster than it would have. Now, I know that we can't always do what we want or use best practices out there in the real world. It's just the way things are. You try to, you strive for that, but in the cases where you come up against something that's just a difficult situation because you have to work with something that's imperfect, try to find yourself a good solution like one of these. Hopefully that helps. You can always add some return if you're lacking airflow. A lot of times they lack airflow too. But as far as the refrigerant circuit, that's the things that I've done. Put in the comments what you've done. Also, make sure you're commenting on every video this month of June, because we're giving away some wonderful pliers and more. Stay tuned. Thank you guys and gals for watching this video, and God bless each and every one of you.
Save 8% off your order at TruTechTools.com by using the Shop Talk discount code.